This exhibit presented in vivid color.
It's the Albacete Show, starring the Místico Monseñor, Lorenzo Albacete. Tonight, we invite you to join Lorenzo and his guests, Bob Pollock, Helen Whitney, Sean O'Malley, Christopher West, Angelo Scola, and more. And now, here's Lorenzo.
Most fundamental fact is that I can give to you a date before which I did not exist. And rapidly approaching is a date which I think, after which perhaps I will not exist. So my first and fundamental question is, what's going on? You know, I think that's a valid question. I wish I didn't question it. I don't know, maybe every reality questions it. Maybe dogs and cats are consumed by this problem. You know, they don't seem to be.
They don't seem to be.
No, I watch a lot of the Discovery channels and the animal thing, and they have no evidence of wondering what the heck's going on, okay?
But we don't know for sure.
No, I don't know anything, but I asked the question, and I don't see an answer anywhere. In fact, nothing seems to answer it. But the question won't go away. Then I notice that there are certain desires that are inconsistent. I should settle down for what I have. And yet, for example, I want people I love not to die. I want friendships that are not betrayed. I want justice. I don't want to be lied to. You know, there are desires that seem to make no sense, that appear, in fact, to be irrational.
And have questions
Now he tells me that these are, you know, that accidentally I've evolved these things. Well, it's true that they don't, you know, these desires don't make me reproduce, but what do you know? Anyway. There is, I admit, a certain uselessness to this in terms of the fact that nothing in the world seems to correspond or answer these desires. Okay, my point, I think all that I ask of myself, and I think it's reasonable to ask of everybody else, is to be faithful to that experience, to that, and explore the implications of this. And if something is found that explains it, so that the question disappears, then fine, that's the end, and that's that.
Previously on the Albacete Show.
Hace 13.8 mil millones de años ocurrió el Big Bang, y Dios creó la luz y muchas cosas maravillosas como estrellas gigantes y asteroides asesinos, y quarks y gravitones. No les puedo decir que son los últimos dos, pero ¿no les parece que suenan súper chévere? Lo más importante para nosotros los humanos es que la Tierra se creó y cuando se enfrió un poco, Dios separó la Tierra del agua para tener todo tipo de lugares espectacularmente bellos. Pero lo más espectacularmente bello de todo es por supuesto la isla de Puerto Rico, que, como todos saben, es donde se encontraba el jardín del Edén. Luego, Dios pobló Puerto Rico y también los lugares menores con todo tipo de plantas y animales estupendos. Me refiero a toneladas y toneladas, y créanme, muchas de las cosas que él creó son realmente extrañas. Y luego, Dios descansó, pero no por mucho tiempo, porque en 1941 nació Lorenzo Albacete. ¿No les parece que era increíblemente lindo? El pequeño Lorenzo hacía pregunta profunda tras pregunta profunda, como por ejemplo, si los peces en algún momento duermen y si tienen sueños, o ¿cuál es el goce favorito de Jesús? Cuando llegó el momento de irse a la universidad, Lorenzo se mudó por avión a Washington D.C., donde llenó su cerebro con preguntas como E igual mc al cubo por pi a la potencia de trigono sobre p menos la raíz cuadrada del infinito y bla bla bla. Lorenzo esperaba pasar el resto de su vida lanzando cohetes al espacio, conquistando planetas y ganando muchos premios Nobel. Pero luego algo total y completamente inesperado ocurrió. Y si quieres descubrir de qué se trata, no te pierdas el próximo capítulo del Albacete Show.
Lorenzo Albacete defies any simple description. He reminds me of the Walt Whitman phrase, "I am large, I contain multitudes."
He was full of joy, smiling. But in that presentation of his person, you will discover rapidly that this is an unusual human being.
As my priest, he in many ways allowed my heart to flow.
He was personal friends with John Paul II. The sense that you always had was that he was really not just teaching us from a book, from a philosophy that he'd learned or a theology he'd learned, but he was teaching out of an experience of friendship.
I read Lorenzo's book and I said, I gotta meet this guy.
He was a total sign of contradiction. I remember him walking in with a cigarette in one hand and a piece of pizza in the other. And I just thought, oh, this is going to be quite a ride. And it was.
I think he took the time for everybody. This exquisite tenderness.
He had this unique ability to speak to the believers and the unbelievers and all shades of gray in between.
When I first met Lorenzo, I remember thinking he was the most exaggerated Puerto Rican I ever met. As a people, we process things in laughter, and he was a genius at that. We sing when we suffer, we dance when we suffer, we enjoy life, and he was like exaggerated in all of these aspects. We are super attentive to the weather because of the hurricanes. He was super paranoid about it. We are wanting to be our own individuals. He was just 100% himself all of the time. And so we take joy in being different.
Lorenzo, he had a profound love with his native country. He had a profound identity with Puerto Rico. And that he was a man who would have chosen probably to die in Puerto Rico just simply out of love for his motherland.
His personality was so rooted in our history and who we are as a people. His passion for culture came from how deeply into his own culture he was. He appreciated who everyone else was because he could only be himself.
He was someone who will treasure the human person. And in his walk through life, he encountered another person.
I am from a native of Puerto Rico, and I grew up in a Latin American Catholic atmosphere. Faith was never questioned. We baptize anything that moves, and then have lots of celebrations and everything. I never found any conflict with my view of life and the proposals of the faith. I never experienced it until my beginning of my work as a scientist at a laboratory in the Washington area. Friends of mine that I absolutely admired and wanted, peers of my work, that I wanted them to accept me, to guide me even. I was a beginner in scientific research. And apparently I was not doing too badly when finally one of them, and I remember it as if it was yesterday, said to me, "How can you claim to be a Catholic, a Christian, a believer for that matter, and be a good scientist?" He said, who is the true you? You come in here during the weekend, and there's no difference between you and us. We accept you, you accept us. We're excited together. We follow the rules of scientific research today. And you're totally indistinguishable from any of us, and a good addition to our group. I mean, I felt very grateful for that. But then you walk out of here, and on Sundays or whatever, suddenly you claim that a dead man stopped being dead. I mean, how can you, are you the same person? How can those two convictions coexist? If you don't let them mix, then you live two lives. Well, you know, the question in a sense hit home. I had never asked it of myself. I did not experience myself as living two lives. I thought it deserved an answer to them, but it deserved an answer to me, because now the question had surfaced inside of me.
When I was a young brother, a Capuchin brother, studying in the seminary, I began to work with the Hispanic immigrants in Washington, particularly at the Cathedral of St. Matthew's. And we had English classes there and a number of other activities. And Lorenzo was sort of a parishioner at the cathedral. We had a lot of mutual friends, and we met then. That would have been in the late 60s, actually. So a long time ago. We became fast friends. At St. Matthew's, there was of course, always a challenge finding parking in downtown Washington. And so they had a small parking lot for the priest, and there was one place reserved for the cardinal. And Lorenzo parked there one night when he was going to some activity at the cathedral. And lo and behold, as soon as he parked the car, the cardinal's car pulled up right behind him, and the cardinal got out. And Cardinal O'Boyle was a wonderful man, but he was sort of a curmudgeon. So he went over to the window, taps on the window, and he says to Lorenzo, "Who are you?" And Lorenzo says, "I'm the cardinal." And Cardinal O'Boyle said, "I'm the cardinal." And Lorenzo says, "Yes, you're the daytime cardinal." He says, "But I'm the nighttime cardinal." And that was the beginning of a fast friendship with Cardinal O'Boyle, who put him into the seminary. He was at Theological College, which was right down the street from the monastery where I lived. So Lorenzo would often come at night and we'd drink coffee late and solve all the problems of the world. And later on, when he was ordained, he asked me to preach at his first Mass, and it was such a joy to see him ordained a priest, and knowing all the talent that God had given him was now at the service of spreading the gospel and bringing the joy of the gospel to our church. Lorenzo liked to joke around a lot, and I fear sometimes Cardinal Hickey didn't understand that he didn't have the same. And very early on, when Hickey arrived, he announced that he was putting in a special phone for priests to call if they had any problems. Lorenzo, the first day, calls in and says, "Oh, Your Excellency, I'm having trouble finding my car keys. Would you be able to help me with this?" And the Archbishop said, "What is wrong with this man?" I said, "He's only joking."
...23 de marzo 2001... Querido don Giussani, la última vez que lo vi en noviembre del año pasado, le comenté que desde que comenzó mi vida como sacerdote, buscaba un contexto eclesiástico que sirviera como el mejor punto de partida y el hogar para mi vocación sacerdotal, mi vocación humana, que me permitiera responder a las diferentes experiencias que me llevaron a reconocer mi llamado. Mi obispo en ese momento, Cardenal William Baum, también compartía mi deseo de poder estar con otras personas que compartían nuestra convicción sobre lo que hacía falta en la forma en que la Iglesia perseguía su misión. Y juntos concebimos ciertos proyectos que parecían poder conducirnos a la situación deseada. Sin embargo, ninguno de ellos dio fruto.
His style, his way of approaching things always spoke of his relationship with someone he knew. He knew that this mystery was revealed in Jesus Christ, but it was still a mystery. One time I was in the rectory with him and, he was looking for something to go to a meeting. I was supposed to drive him to the meeting. He couldn't find what he was looking for. And this is in his room. And of course, his room was completely disheveled and, not very well organized. And so I was like, oh my God, how are we going to find this? And so I said, just kind of off the cuff, it was kind of a personal thing, I was like, oh, let's ask St. Anthony. And he said, so Lorenzo at that point goes nuts. I mean, it was like, don't mention his name. I was like, well, who did I say? He said, he did not. He's looking up, he said, he did not talk to you. He did not mention you. He looks to me and he says, St. Anthony hates me. We will never find this now. And it just struck me that I had never, it was kind of like a common pious thing that you would say, let's ask St. Anthony. But to him, these were real relationships, and they were relationships that kind of spun in different directions at different times. This one who knows Jesus Christ in his own way and in a personal way can also help you to do that. And so it was a unique, for me anyway, a unique and very personal and very intimate way to understand how the saints engage. We never found the document, by the way, so it was
When he came to Washington to give his talk at Catholic U and visit people here, he stayed at the house of Cardinal Baum, my boss. And the Cardinal asked me, since he knew Cardinal Wojtyła was a scholar and intellectual and interested in these things, he asked me to be around and for conversation purposes, etc. And that's what I did. He was dressed in a black cassock, and there was no great claim to fame. But before one would even talk about his ideas, I was aware of a great, that you were in the presence of a man with almost capital M. There is in him a great authority, but in the good sense of the word, not a frightening one, a great weight of presence and intensity of you know that this man has a very intense inner life. We talked extensively about all kinds of, first of all, I asked him what he was studying and what he was going to talk about, and that led to all kinds of mutual interest in philosophy and theology. And we had departed with the understanding that I would write, that I would continue the dialogue we had here, that I would become more familiar with some of references, sources he had given me, and I never did. I never wrote again. You know, I went in and said, Holy Father, well, what can I say? And he said, well, I'll bet you'll write now.
You're watching The Albacete Show.
What made the most impression on me was his person. He was a man who was free. And I was 25, 26 at the time. I was bound up by so many fears, by so many hang-ups. And there's this man who had some encounter with a love that he just called the mystery, that had truly changed his life and liberated him. And I said, whatever that man has, I need it.
He was such a presence in the classroom. He never just taught. He always brought himself, and a very profound, personal, lived experience that was always coming through everything that he taught. So that was that was more moving, I think, than a lot of lectures.
I remember one moment in the classroom where on one drag of his cigarette, as if he again was inhaling almost the whole thing, he had begun by saying, "The scandal of the hick. The scandal of the hick." And I thought, what is he talking about? The scandal of the hick. And of course, anybody who knows Albacete's teaching, he was about to give us a profound meditation on the mystery of the incarnation, and the fact that at the Basilica of the Annunciation, which I just visited 9 months ago in the Holy Land, is a plaque on an altar that has the familiar, the Word was made flesh, except here we have the word hic. The Word was made flesh here. And what began humorously with the inhale of the cigarette and this curiosity about the scandal of the hic became, as I said, a profound meditation on the mystery of the incarnation, which utterly captivated and fascinated this man, and in turn, anyone in that classroom who was paying attention and willing to go on the journey that Albacete wanted to take us on. He had us enthralled. And I have been reflecting on that scene, the cigarette, the scandal of the hick, and how he set the whole thing up. I have been reflecting on that scene in the classroom for 25 years.
He would say something that would rock your world, but then you'd be thinking, I want to know more. What is this all about? And of course, the way his very personal presence just drew you in. You'd be very riveted by everything he said. And so I just, that every encounter I had with him was like that. I would say, like, every personal encounter had that quality to it, of just being, like I said, scandalized or shocked or rocked, but also attracted, drawn, magnetized, by his presence. So that was consistent through the whole time I was a student.
In Albacete's mind, there was no difference. Well, let me say it this way. There was a distinction between the sacred and the secular, but not a division. They were wed for him. And again, that flows right out of his lifelong ponderings and entering into and living out the reality of the incarnation.
So it was that proposal and just that Monsignor was always proposing things like that. He's always just bringing forward the absolute truth of the situation, the reality of the situation. And, as students, we couldn't retreat into our own version of what Catholicism was. It was more a question of really coming face to face with the reality. And so that was a huge, I would say it was such a huge experience that I can distinctly remember sitting in his classroom. I can remember where I was sitting, right next to the window, second row on the left side, and being so struck by the manner of his teaching that I said to myself, I know now why I came here to study. It was so I could be in this class right now, listening to this man. It was very dramatic for me at the time.
And now a word from the Mystical Monsignor.
Today's word is
mystery.
Can you tell us in your native speech why they call you the Mystical Monseñor?
Me llaman el Monseñor místico porque a mí siempre me ha interesado, me ha fascinado el concepto del misterio.
¿Por qué?
Porque hay algo detrás de las apariencias. Yo quiero saber, algo me llama.
¿Dónde
¿Qué
es
hay
el
detrás?
misterio?
Precisamente ese es el problema, que lo busco y no puedo localizarlo en una manera definitiva. Lo puedo empezar, está aquí, esto contiene el secreto, pero obviamente no, va a ir más allá, más allá. Esa búsqueda me inquieta.
It was about 6 p.m. because I remember this because it was right after dinner. I didn't have any appointments yet because I was still newly ordained, so you had a little free time. And I started clicking on his name, and article after article, and then YouTube after YouTube. It was about 3 or 4 in the morning when I got to bed after I was binging on Albacete. And I remember deep in my heart just saying, finally. Like, I finally found someone who could say things that I was feeling and intuiting, but I was certainly never going to be smart enough to articulate the things the way he was, but I at least knew what he was saying is what my hesitation had always been in my theological studies. And so I just knew right away, I somehow have to stay close to him. And oh crap, what am I going to do now? The guy's dead.
Lorenzo's here in the presence of Benedict XVI, you know, the most exquisite of pontiffs in every way of being. And here was Lorenzo there with the Holy Father. Half of his face was shaven. You know, his coat was covered with whatever he had eaten that morning and 3 weeks before. And he was completely at ease. I mean, that's our Catholic faith. And this is who Lorenzo was. This is who Lorenzo was. You know, Jesus is not afraid of any of that stuff. And Lorenzo wasn't afraid of any of it either. And I think in loving Lorenzo and being in friendship with Lorenzo, it should teach us not to be afraid of those things either.
Every single one of us entering into these retreats because of Lorenzo, because it had something to say to us about our lives, you know, and not, they were, of course, they were hilarious and fun and beautiful, these retreats. But to see him in his, not only him thinking through everything and praying about it and laying out everything in front of you, but how much he loved these priests, he loved being with us, sitting outside smoking and just hanging out forever, you know, as just to talk, just to hang out and talk to these guys.
This was a man who I believe was so in touch with his own humanity, and like every humanity, you know, broken, wounded, problematic, and everything like that, that he was able to attend to other people in their moments of brokenness, of woundedness, of suffering. He really did have that exquisite tenderness. I saw it offered to me.
That's always the hiding, is somehow my humanity is going to get in the way. And he was given some grace at some point where he just knew from the top of his head to the bottom of his toes that my humanity ain't an obstacle to anything, because if God became flesh, then this is how it's going to get to you. Sorry. And that was it. And then, and by doing that, he gave you permission to say, well, crap, if that's the way Lorenzo is, I'm not Lorenzo, I'm Ryan, but I guess I got to be Ryan then. If that's how God's going to come into the world, I guess I got to figure that out then. I have to wrestle with the fact that I am part of the equation of God entering the world. And Lorenzo was fine with that. He didn't need to have the answer. He just was okay with, well, it's coming through me somehow. And I found that to be really a blessing.
Everything about him was, can you stay with me? Can you be with me? And you wanted to be there. And when you did, you, like Father Ryan was just saying, you then begin to see things in a more beautiful way. And that's why we miss him so much.
En 10 años el instituto creció, partiendo de sus humildes inicios hasta convertirse en una de las facultades teológicas más prestigiosas en los Estados Unidos. Angelo Scola viajaba frecuentemente de Roma para enseñar allí y nos hicimos buenos amigos. Antes de conocer a Angelo, buscaba una síntesis teológica que reuniera todas las áreas de la experiencia que impulsaba mi vida y mi vocación. Y creía que el instituto sería un lugar de privilegio para formularla. Ahora yo entendía que no iba a ser suficiente. Tendría que hacer mucho más que formular un entendimiento teológico apropiado. Angelo reconoció lo que necesitaba y programó mi primera reunión contigo en Milano.
Per me è stata una amicizia molto, molto grande. Dopo cena andavamo abbastanza di frequente in una delle chiese di Washington, cui c'era l'adorazione perpetua, per pregare un po', ognuno per conto proprio. Io andavo un po' forzato, ma lui ci teneva molto, insomma, trovava sempre il modo per trascinarmi.
He was different. There was something about him that I had never seen in a priest. Being interested in and embracing everything that was good, interesting, and to do so freely. So I asked him, I said, how come you are like that? And how come you think like that? And he said, well, you see, I was educated by this Monsignor Luigi Giussani. And who's he?
And then he gave me his name, told me the story, movement, etc. But then that was a foreign and strange thing to me. But fine, that was that. Every time that he acted this way, I asked him the same question, and always the same damn Giussani kept coming up.
Fin dall'inizio, prima che lui mi dicesse appunto quella volta lì, perché citi sempre Don Giussani, perché dici questo, perché dici quello, io anche un po' stufo gli disse, ma tu a parlare con Don Giussani.
Only that scholar wasn't there, he had framed us, he had set us up. He put the two of us together, and he never intended to be there. So Giussani was thinking, what the heck is this guy here for? And I was thinking, what do I say to him? You know, hi, I like your books. Would you autograph this?
E quindi ho creduto che l'incontro diretto fosse realmente importante per lui e magari avevo anche pensato per il movimento negli Stati Uniti.
And at the end of this long conversation, he had asked me for help for the movement in the United States, and I agreed. And so when I got back to the United States, I began to be more involved in certain of the activities of the movement. Never did I think myself part of it. Through being with these people and living life with them and doing these gestures with them, that theological synthesis I had worked together had become a life, something concrete, a real life, an experience of life, and not just a thought.
Raramente un intellettuale si sposta fino lì, a un'età relativamente matura, avanzata della sua vita. Quindi, secondo me, è proprio il concetto di esperienza, o meglio, il metodo del partire dall'esperienza.
At the end of tonight's episode, we will reveal the contents of this never-before-seen secret mystery tape, in which Lorenzo Albacete reveals the answer to a question that has remained unanswered for more than 60 million years. Stay tuned to The Albacete Show.
Seppi che si era liberata il rettorato di Porto Rico e allora dissi a Givic e al Papa che Albacete poteva andare bene, rischiando molto, sapevo di rischiare, solo che avevano già scelto il nuovo rettore, ma nonostante questo il Papa all'ultimo momento cambiò, disse via questo qui e vada a Albacete.
The conversations were just terrific. You know, here, this small university, the goals, the sensibility of making it kind of the meeting place of both North and South America and the studies that were going on. It was great expectations. I mean, it was just great fun.
He would have been a wonderful president, except that the bishops in the island, they got nervous because it was so creative and so different, you know, that they just didn't know how to take him.
How could they miss what was being given to them? How could they not see the potential for what was possible?
E lì lui entrò con la sua personalità, con tutti i vescovi contro per questa operazione, con disordine nell'amministrazione finanziaria. Insomma, gliene fecero di tutti i colori e lui dopo un anno.
We call him Lorenzo the Brief, no, because it only lasted 9 months, his presidency.
Lorenzo siempre fue un hombre lleno de amor a Puerto Rico, se sentía muy contento de haber nacido aquí. Cuando los obispos de Puerto Rico pidieron al cardenal Hickey que Lorenzo pasara a ser el presidente de la Pontificia Universidad Católica de Puerto Rico, Lorenzo aceptó. Él tenía todas las cualificaciones. Tenía su doctorado, tenía su formación, tenía el pensamiento de la iglesia muy bien formado, tenía unas conexiones muy buenas para continuar y ayudar a la Universidad Pontificia Católica de Puerto Rico. Cuando Lorenzo entró a la presidencia, encontró una serie de problemas serios en la administración de la universidad. Y él empezó a abrir ese camino con el beneplácito de los obispos al principio y sobre todo de la facultad o miembros de la facultad. Lorenzo se encontró con un grupo de oposición muy fuerte que incluía el entonces obispo de Ponce, que era el gran canciller de la universidad, y de otros miembros de la Junta de Síndicos. Yo fui presidente de la Junta de Síndicos después de la presidencia de Lorenzo, desde el año 2000 al 2011 al 2020. Lorenzo, al encontrarse las dificultades y los problemas, trató de empezar a abrir el camino. Al no poderlos abrir por la oposición de grupos que estaban con intereses encontrados, quisieron forzarlo. Yo fui el obispo que llamaron el obispo de Ponce en aquel momento para que me comunicara con el superior eclesiástico de Lorenzo, que era el cardenal James Hickey de Washington, D.C., para ver cómo Lorenzo podía salir de la universidad. De ahí yo me di cuenta que había un problema muy serio que no era con Lorenzo. El problema de la administración, de los gastos que hacía Lorenzo, eran dentro de lo que un presidente gastaba y quizás menos. Hoy día yo me he dado cuenta, después de ser presidente más tarde y encontrar las dificultades de la universidad y tratar de resolverlas, que tuvimos que apelar hasta la Congregación de Educación en la Santa Sede para resolverlos, porque habían grupos de intereses muy envueltos en el problema. Lorenzo, con mucha caridad y con mucho dolor, dejó la presidencia y aceptó salir. Eso es algo que yo he pedido a la universidad, que haga una reseña de Lorenzo en sus 2 años de presidencia, para que se vaya viendo realmente lo que Lorenzo hizo y quiso hacer y fue impedido de hacerlo por otros.
I've described him as this brilliant missionary to the secular world. It's no small thing to be able to do that, to be that in the midst of modernity.
So we had the same, not the same language so much as the same presumption of the necessity of being clear about what we don't know. And that's what brought us together in a very serious, ongoing way, so that I am still talking to Lorenzo in my head sometimes.
He always said to me, you know, Helen, I get up and have to fight every morning about what it is that I believe. Validation never completely ends, even for a Monsignor. But I guess what I'm saying is that soulful, hard to describe question of what is of ultimate value in your life was one that came up with Lorenzo in ways that it rarely does with other very close friends. And so, as I was saying, friendship with Lorenzo, there was so much food on the plate, so many different meals, and he seemed, and I with him, to touch all those bases.
That is Lorenzo's legacy. It is the absolute transferable, non-judgmental, available possibility of the love that Amy and I felt in your house, the love that I felt hanging out with Lorenzo. It is safe love. And that's his legacy to me.
It was also funny.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, I'm a seeker. I haven't found my faith, but he always gave me hope that I one day would. And as I said, he helped me doubt my doubt. And I think he did that for so many people.
Cuando volvíamos a Nueva York después de un viaje, sobrevolamos la ciudad y solo podía pensar que mi familia estaba allá abajo y que tú eres nuestro Padre y que el movimiento era la respuesta a mi búsqueda de toda la vida. Finalmente, había llegado a casa.
Before encountering Albacete, Giussani was speaking about US, about American mission, but Albacete was the incarnation of this possibility. And I think that what Albacete suggested is not the past, it's the future.
We didn't know exactly what was happening and what was going to happen. But as the adventure went by, I saw that, how can I put it? That was becoming Lorenzo's flesh. I mean, in giving himself and in sharing his love for Father Giussani, he received the 100-fold.
You need a culture able to take inside everyone. Lorenzo is this position, also because he went from Puerto Rico, he was a scientist, he was a priest. He's an example in his life of this possible connection between different parts of American people.
It seemed that he had been taken a little bit too early. And so in order to make sure that future generations had the opportunity to experience the same person that we had, we decided to form a way in which that could be done. And so the Albacete Forum was created out of that desire to continue sharing Monsignor's legacy with the world. Collecting everything that we had of him, from hand scribbled notes on napkins that were written on his way to important speeches, notes, email correspondence, talks he had given, little bits that had been recorded here and there, to the pens that he bought all over the country and the world, and and collected by, quite frankly, the thousands. And to form an archive first and foremost, and then to use that archive in a way that would continue to offer Monsignor Albacete's thoughts and what hadn't ever been published by him with people who had not yet encountered him, or for those people who had encountered him, as a way to go even deeper into knowledge of him. And this became a work, and we wanted to share this both in public forums and with the publication of books.
When it was the moment to leave, Albacete greeted him, kind of embracing him, and then he left. So then it was my turn to greet Father Giussani, and I went there to embrace him. And Father Giussani said, looking at Monsignor, who was just leaving, he said, I say it in Italian first, dobbiamo dare tutto per quest'uomo. We have to give everything for this man.
It's been a great honor and pleasure for me to be working on a collection of Lorenzo Albacete's writings called The Relevance of the Stars, published by Slant Books, the literary imprint that I edit. And it's a book that I think has been one that many people have been longing to see. People have understood that he was a real thinker, and this collection brings together a wide range of his most thoughtful pieces that are both grounded in deep theological ideas, but also with his classic ability to communicate with humor, with concreteness, and with a certain level of mischief and fun.
After Monsignor died, there was a ton of material that he created in all different formats, a lot of it not in digital format, that we collected and we've put together in an online archive. The Relevance of the Stars is really the fruit of going through the archive, taking some of these gems, putting them together in a single volume.
One of the things that I really love about The Relevance of the Stars is the way that it synthesizes the thought of Luigi Giussani, the founder of Community Liberation, and Popes John Paul II and Benedict XVI. And then the second half of the book really applies these insights to a variety of issues: how Christians engage culture, how the professions can be pursued in ways that follow the common good. And so there are essays on law and medicine, university teaching, youth. There's a tremendous breadth there, but there's a unifying vision at the heart of it that really ties everything together in a powerful way.
The stars represent the desire for the infinite of the human heart. And the proposal that Monsignor makes is that it's only by living for those infinite desires that we're ever going to get anywhere in life, right? So we have to get to the bottom of that.
Our desire, our hunger for truth and for beauty and for goodness and justice really do shape everything that we see, the whole world. And that goes right down to the things that we're tempted to think of as mundane, but how we live, how we eat, how we hang out with each other. And Albacete gives that an intellectual grounding that's very, very accessible and readable.
How do we live according to those desires in a society which is, on the face of it, entirely divided, right? That's what we've experienced this year, is this huge division in our culture between different camps, ideologies, different approaches, different parties. And I think that what Monsignor Albacete does in this book is he gives us a starting point for understanding the division and getting to and healing it, getting to the bottom of how we could heal that.
And now, we reveal the never-before-seen contents of this secret mystery tape, in which Lorenzo Albacete reveals the answer to a question that has remained unanswered for more than 60 million years.
Why did God create dinosaurs?
Well, I have that answer.
because he enjoys something. Because there was a Noah in his mind from all eternity. From all eternity, he has known this truth. And he created dinosaurs because he loves them. Why is that? Because God is absolute love. And when you think about how you act when you're in love, completely insane. You do absolutely useless and crazy things. Things that are in fact somewhat embarrassing. When you are not in love, you know? You say, how could I ever have done anything so silly? And you do crazy stuff like that. Well, that's you. Imagine absolute infinite love. You know? I have a friend of mine who's a priest, the Archbishop now, and we were a few years ago on this, back home I'm from Puerto Rico, and in the south coast there are these little mangroves. There's like little islands that they don't have sand. They have like the roots of the tree are the ground. I mean, but they are hundreds of trees with the mixed roots. They kind of like just float in the ocean. And you go through little channels, you know, you take a little boat and go through channels of tons of these. It looks like, you know, you're in Miami Vice or something. And, it's just and you go through them and, you know, we took her for a ride. And you see the weirdest little silly, stupid animals, like crabs this big, little crabs, little fishes that jump, and you see them. I mean, no human being has ever seen those crabs. I mean, the particular one. No one will ever see it again. They are born, they die, they live, they die. And you say, you know, what's going on? I mean, 90% of the time, these creatures are invisible. I said today, I watched the Discovery Channel. One of the things I love is when they go down to depths that no one has ever gone before and see these weird life forms. Some of them so incredibly awesome and beautiful. And yet, there's nobody there prior to them to see them, you know. Why are they there? And I said that to Father, this priest, because he said, you know, I was just thinking, all creation, everything that exists, the Bible says, is for Christ. And it is a gift to him, including ourselves, from his Father. You know, the Father must really be completely and crazily in love with his Son, because he's just given him too much. He can't stop creating strange, new, different things, just as a gift. And I remember that I knew my father, I was an only son for many years, and my brother came along and ruined it all. And I used to take advantage of my father, who thought, you know, that I was like, I mean, his successor. He had me, he was an older person, I don't think he expected to have a kid. And then I was just so beautiful, and I had a clean, and it's just kind of like this, the hair, just like, I was just so incredibly cute. And played it up, you know. And at Christmas time, I could hear him discussing with my mother, I wonder if we got him enough presents. I said, oh, this is a chance. So I would go look around, and he said, say, hey, Daddy. And he would go out to buy presents. My mother said, can't you see he's doing this to you? Because he wants presents, he already has enough. I mean, he's lying. I'm like, impossible. I was. She was right, I hated her. Because she could tell that I was lying. But he couldn't. I really manipulated this man till I got stuff that I really didn't even want it or need. I know that if I put the right face on, he would just go out and spend every penny he had. He wasn't a rich man, in buying all kinds of this. And I think that's my father. Can you imagine the eternal Father, the eternal Son, giving him presents? That's the reason why there are dinosaurs. It's exaggeration in creation. Matter, antimatter, black holes, nobody knows what's there. Creatures, beings of all kinds. It's completely outrageously out of control. What does it tell you? It tells you that behind all of this is an infinite law gone crazy. So I'm not lying to you. I very seriously tell you, I mean, as serious as I can, that I would not find it strange if the only reason there are dinosaurs is to make no one happy.
En el próximo capítulo del Albacete Show, Slam Books anuncia la publicación de la guía de ejercicios del Albacete y todas las páginas están en blanco. Luego Lorenzo intenta una vez más ganarse a San Antonio, contratando unos mariachis para que toquen el día de su fiesta, solo que sin querer le tocan un himno a Santa Liduvina, la santa patrona de los patinadores sobre hielo. Entonces, San Antonio se molesta más que nunca con Lorenzo. El Albacete Forum está abrumado en su intento de archivar los 17.862.443 bolígrafos que Lorenzo acumuló en su vida. Ah, esperen, acabo de encontrar dos más. Serían 17.862.445 o tal vez más. Lo veremos en el próximo capítulo del Albacete Show.